Good evening, everyone. I hope you are well. If you happen to have watched Keir Starmer's live press conference today and you took note of what he said and read between the lines, then I would imagine that, like many others, you are or should be terrified, because what Keir Starmer did today effectively was cynically exploit the events of the last few days to gently roll out his plans for a police state and control on what's said and by who, and anybody who offends the state could even be restricted travel through image recognition, facial recognition, denied access to trains, public transport, etc. This is sounding very much like something you would expect in China. We all know that the violence that we've seen in the last 2 or 3 days is not just inappropriate, it doesn't help, and it plays right into the hands of Keir Starmer and his Marxist cohort, because these people don't represent the mass of the population who, although are angry, would not behave in that manner. But this has given the left and the government an opportunity to point the finger at them and to use them as an excuse to bring in laws that they are itching to bring into place. Keep in mind that Labour is the party of control. They are Marxist. They want to control what's said. They want to control how we think. They want to control where we go and how we get there. And the people who behaved badly this week have played right into their hands. We do, of course, have to stand up to what is going on, but this is not the way to do it. The way we need to do it is we need to have an alternative ready and waiting, which we don't at this moment in time, because this government is not going to last the 5 years. They are literally facing more and more problems every day, and I dread to think where we will be by the middle of winter. We may very well have a disastrous winter, and who knows what will happen. The problem is this: that we don't want a Labour government with a large majority, albeit that majority was not one that they had earned. As we're all aware, their total votes were the lowest last month than they have been for decades, and that was lower than their total votes in 2019, which were even lower than 2017. This was not people voting for Labour. This was Conservative voters either voting elsewhere or staying at home. So here we have a party which received just 33% of the votes cast, but is sitting in government with 66% of the seats. And out of the total people registered to vote, it is estimated about 80% do not want Labour. It's strange how 51.8% in favour of Brexit wasn't good enough for most of these people, and yet 33% and a majority by default is more than good enough. So the problem is, if it really falls apart, will it result in a general election, or will it result in Keir Starmer standing down and somebody even more dangerous taking over his place? Either option is worrying. So, in the first instance, we need to ensure that we are working now on a viable alternative, not in a few months' time, not next year, not when the next election is called. It has to be done now. this is the reason that I have been arguing that we should be assigning every single reform supporter membership and a right to vote, so that in every constituency, all the reform members can be invited to a meeting, and all the candidates, and hopefully there'll be more than one, because the members should have a choice, should be elected by the members, so that we have elected candidates from now. And those candidates should be elected by the local members, who would then be engaging with the member, with the party, to support that member, whoever he or she it may be, male or female, young or old, doesn't matter, as long as it is the best person for the job and the one that the local people want, because the fight must begin now. Members shouldn't be selected by somebody further up, an area manager, a regional manager, who may have personal differences with that candidate, and candidates may be stood down for personal reasons. Personal reasons don't come into it. It should be whatever the local members want. That is democratic. That's how it should be. Because if we're going to fight this fight, we need to begin from the people who vote and work our way upwards. And we need to be fighting now, because we have a crisis in the making. Just take a look at the comments here. Who we got first? Jay Corman Kane. Did Starmer just trigger a civil war by creating a unit to tackle concerned citizens and failing to mention Leeds, Manchester or Southend in his speech? Okay, right. Well, first of all, I think we saw some quite concerning scenes from the police. There were 2-3 people. I don't know if anyone was actually there who can tell me better, but from what I can see, and we do have a pretty good view in the video, there was a chap standing there in Whitehall, and they literally just went for him and then started punching him in the head. There's been no mention of anything that's happened elsewhere. He went to Southport, laid some flowers, got his photographs, and he never stopped to speak to anyone. That's just beyond belief. Beyond belief. He should have made time to speak to people, to hear what they have to say, but he's not interested. On the contrary, not only he doesn't want to hear what they have to say, he doesn't want anybody else to hear what they have to say. He wants them gagged, and anybody who contradicts the fanatical left-wing Marxist narrative that this government and their fanatical supporters are spewing out is going to be on their hit list. And today, he basically as good as told us what he's going to do. This is really, really serious, because he is out to shut everybody down. And most of those who are a target are those of us who disagree with the narrative that has been rammed down our throat by these globalists, by these fanatics, not just Starmer, but the lot who were in before him were no better. And in fact, as I've said before, if we reflect on the last 2 years or so since Sunak got into power, watching what he's done from then until now, he basically destroyed the Conservative Party. He has caused untold damage to the country. He allowed immigration to explode. He called a snap election, which many of us interpreted to have been to preempt reform. It may well have been. Others, because they believe that no flights to Rwanda will take off. That's possible. I don't know, but that's a possibility. On the other hand, many Conservatives were fuming because they felt that it was the wrong time and they should have had up until November. Or was it really that he was just following orders and he was intent on just destroying the Conservatives and then just handing it over to Starmer? I really don't know. But going by his behaviour since the election, 3 weeks tomorrow, as in 3 weeks tomorrow since this lot actually were declared government, if you like, has he landed a single blow on Starmer as the opposition? Uh, there has never been an administration that is so easy to attack in Parliament as these. They've lied on everything. They have no clue what they are doing. They are a bunch of virtue signalling hypocrites. They have already gone back on their pledges with taxes. They have taken the winter fuel allowance away from 10 million pensioners, of which maybe 9.5 million actually really need it. And yet at the same time, we have got Ed Miliband on a virtue signalling eco trip around the world, who's going to give away 11.7 billion of our money to other countries in their efforts for net zero. They're still pressing ahead with their attack on independent schools, which they budgeted would raise them 1.7 billion. But we know even when it first comes in, it will probably be half that, because tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of children will be pulled out of independent schools. So it's not just the loss of VAT, it's the additional cost as they enter state schools, plus the tax on the salaries of the teachers and so on and so forth. And within 6 months to a year, so many will have left. It will not only will it not raise anything, I believe it could end up being a net loss. So what is the objective? The objective is they want to destroy independent schools, and they want everybody's children in state schools where they can be indoctrined with the narrative of the fanatic left. That is seriously dangerous. And today, his arrogant stance, with no empathy for the people, no empathy for how the British public feel, I think it says it all. Yes, he is. Yes, he is. And today he began to show his true colours. There's far worse to come. Yes, that's true. However, it is the way that the protests are conducted and the numbers. We definitely must not support any acts of violence. We must not encourage it, and we must try to prevent anybody we know who is involved from taking part, because it plays right into their hands. This behavior that they've seen this week is not what they fear. This is what they want, because they can use it as an excuse to bring in laws. In fact, I would go so far as in certain ways to say that they have been provoking a reaction in order to bring this in. Usual strategy: create a problem, terrify the people, offer a solution. It's been done time and time again. But what they really do fear would be 2 million people marching through London peacefully, absolutely peacefully, in such numbers that it would terrify them. That would be a completely different story. Remember that they fear us far more than we fear them. And the only way that they can stay in power, to stay strong, is to divide everyone. You only need to look at how much more toxic their supporters have become. I don't know about yourselves, but I have noticed that any hint of questioning anything that is happening, anything they don't like, they descend on you, normally with faceless fake accounts, but they will literally bombard your account and your posts with abuse, with slander, with absolute rubbish. They will go to any lengths. These people are really deranged, and they are servants of Starmer, effectively, or put it in a more common context, useful idiots. The left and Muslims can call for jihad and nothing done. Well, part of the problem has been that since October last year, the police have blatantly and without doubt shown that on the one hand, they will allow inappropriate protests to bring our city to a halt, people supporting terrorism, people inciting hatred along religious and racial lines, and they let them get away with it. And we had a situation where somebody was stopped and threatened with arrest because for his own protection, because he was openly Jewish on an English street in London, in the capital city of Great Britain. Who would have believed that? And this is where we have got to. So the message that has come out from the police is one that they are literally pandering to certain sections of society. But in their defense, when you have police commissioners who are elected and you have a political police force, then police commissioners then are not concerned. Their first concern is not to enforce the law. Their first concern is to pander to their voter base so that they can get re-elected because they get huge salaries and all the perks and prestige that goes with it. Merseyside, how do you feel about your leader calling you far-right thugs? This is how it's been this week, hasn't it? Far-right, EDL, or whatever it is, must be reform voters. We know the usual bile that comes from them, but this is because they have no argument. There is no logic to this Marxist argument. That's why they always resort to verbal abuse and name calling, or they prefer to just make it illegal for you to answer back and respond. And this is what they're trying to do it now. And some of the scenes I've seen, especially last night, indicate to me that they were out to provoke. There was even a scene where a police officer turned round to two of the protesters and was saying, "Thank you for the pay rise," effectively being sarcastic just to wind them up. So it seemed that they were on a mission to provoke. Labour, aka Britain's Communist Party. Well, there is argument that we have actually had a communist takeover in this country in recent years by stealth, because they have infiltrated our universities. They've turned institutions of education into institutions of indoctrination. They have infiltrated and manipulated young minds through social media. They have infiltrated government positions. They have encouraged a fanatical and destructive demographic to flood our country, to undermine it. They have encouraged race shaming amongst white people. So, young people in school, if you're young and white, you are made to feel that you should be ashamed. And if you're anything else, you're made to feel that you are a victim and you are entitled. And this is why we have literally an explosion of crime, an explosion of people just walking into shops and helping themselves and walking out bold as brass, because in their head, they have reached a point where they feel that they're entitled to do that. This is the point, that the level that we have got to, and it's actually rising exponentially on a daily basis. Here in Kingsthorpe, in Northampton, in our local WhatsApp Crime Watch group that I created, I've managed to convince most of the shops in the main street to join, and I've just been watching the incidents go up and up and up. And although they were rising before, since the election, they literally took off, and it's happening several times a day to some shops now. How long will those shops stay where they are when they're facing this? In the end, they will all just close down and go. What Lab tried to do, Lab made difficult. What Labour tried to do, whatever Labour tried to do, Labour made difficult. Everything they do ends up a complete and utter mess. These 1.5 million homes aren't going to get built. They've lowered the bar now, haven't they? They've now basically told us that they are going to build ugly buildings. That's what Labour do anyway. It's not just a matter of funds. it is because they destroy culture. I don't know about your towns, but in most places, I can identify property. Obviously, it is my business. I can identify the period when it was built, and some of the ugliest buildings, not just in Northampton, but around the country, were either built during a Labour government or under a Labour council. They have no respect for heritage. They have no respect for our culture. They have no respect for our country, or our borders, or anything that we hold dear. And as you know, we have a Prime Minister who is on the record stating he prefers Davos to Westminster. Now, if that alone is not a reason for people to demand for him to stand down, then effectively, what does that mean? It basically means that the nation has almost been neutered into just being quietly angry. How long will people continue to feel this way? But the problem is, people must not react, because then we open a can of worms and it just becomes an uncontrollable civil war. And we do not want that. We want a war from non-compliance, a war from peaceful pressure, and we are able to do that in numbers. The amount of people who are angry now, we can easily summon up millions to descend on London, millions, and that is what it will take. But it must be done peacefully, and it must be organised well, because they will be doing their absolute best to provoke. 3 weeks. Yes. Isn't it? Is it 3 or 4 tomorrow? I've lost track. 5th of July. Actually, yes. 28. Actually, yes. It's isn't it 4 weeks? 4 weeks tomorrow. Crikey. It feels like a lifetime already, I'm afraid. They arrested their own voters very shortly. You won't be allowed to leave your front door without wearing a designer sport jacket and modern day scannable equivalent to the purple patch. I think that they're just going to push with the facial recognition. He said that today, courtesy of their friends in the Far East, and we are literally rapidly hurtling towards the Chinese system, social credits. We know for a fact from Klaus Schwab of the WEF that he is a passionate supporter of stakeholder capitalism, which is effectively what China has. The government has a hand in everything and controls everything. This is what they have in mind, but everything is under the umbrella. It's for your own good. And unfortunately, there are a large number of people who fall for their narrative, and this is the problem. Let's show dystopian times ahead. Welcome, Michael. Yes, I agree. Never mind ahead. Already, just about, I'm afraid. And I do think Sunak tried to sabotage his party. Yes, I believe that he did. Watching now everything Sunak did, watching them, even just the way that they interacted, it actually really angered me, because it just showed what hypocrites they are. And it wasn't just Starmer and Sunak, it was also his foul-mouthed deputy Angela Rayner and Penny Mordaunt after their charade of this schoolyard screaming match in the debates before the election. And then once it was over, it was that same pally. It wasn't just polite conversation. It was more like allies. You would be not wrong to think, are these two part on the same team? Well, effectively, they are. And as Nigel Farage says, in this election, we did not elect another prime minister or another government. We just elected a bunch of new middle management because the CEOs, they're pulling the strings and they're in the background, and most of us don't even know who they are. So can an elected government get ousted by the people, or can only MPs do that? Legally, it can only be the MPs who can call a vote of no confidence. However, the people en masse can bring a government down. We can bring this to an end, but before we do so, we must have an alternative in place. Um, Random, for example, what if we were to just facilitate the toppling of Keir Starmer, and he would be replaced by someone else? Who would that be? Angela Rayner, um, Rachel Reeves, Ed Miliband, Sadiq Khan? Uh, it just doesn't bear thinking about. But for them to fall and to be replaced, there must be a suitable alternative. And what is left of the Conservative Party is an insult to the word conservative, because we are left with about 110 wets and Suella Braverman. And whenever Suella walks away, which I expect that she will, the rest of them might as well just merge with the Labour Party, because as I've said many times before, just as the animals looking in the window at the end of the book Animal Farm couldn't tell the pigs and the farmers apart, that's how it is in Parliament now. There is no Parliament. There is no debate. Nobody stands up and actually makes an impassioned argument. It is all token gestures. It is all, look at me, how wonderful I am on my social media because I asked this or I asked that and I wrote this letter. It means absolutely nothing. And these people, if there were people who had the courage to stand there and say it how it is, are probably the easiest administration to tear apart since the days of Michael Foot. Leave it to our Lord and Saviour Jesus. They should fear Jesus. Amen. I think that we may need his help. We do need his help, but we have to do this ourselves. A sit-down protest with a small number of spokespersons. The establishment need to remember the world is watching. It may well be a sit-down process, but it can't just be tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands. It needs to be in the millions, and it has to be peaceful. Study the Chartist rebellion of the 1840s. Yes, I know a little bit about it, but not enough. But now that you mentioned it, yes, I will do. Thank you. Sort of. Good question that I've always wondered. There hasn't been an EL for 9 years. Sky News chatting shit. Absolutely. But unfortunately, this is how they work. They just throw stuff out there and throw stuff out there because most people just scan headlines and they know just how to do it. They know how to literally plant a knife and not leave their fingerprints on it. And this is why the likes of Sky News, who are now consider themselves to have been promoted to being the establishment media, which is why there have been calls from, what was his name, the guy from Sky News. Years ago, I used to like him. He used to do the same thing as Liam Halligan used to do on Sky, on GB News. He was their finance correspondent. I've forgotten what he is now. Horrible man who called for GB News to be closed down. Then you have Kay Burley. I remember when she was actually quite nice. That was about a nice person. That was about 30 or 40 years ago. I even remember The Sun doing a feature about her in a yellow MX5, Kay's Day, whatever it was, an inspiration to women and so on. And I don't know what happened, but somewhere She did a deal and she took 30 pieces of silver, and now she thinks that she's holier than thou. Um, and then we have the BBC, then we have the Guardian. Um, and what right does the BBC have? Uh, the home of the paedophiles. Once again, they have covered for another paedophile, one way or another, paying tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands to somebody who they knew what he had done for at least several months, if not for longer. If you find out, please put it in this channel. I would love to know. The police wasn't stopping the Leeds riots with batons and riot gear. No, they wouldn't. They ran away. Now, running away, was that simply out of fear? Is our police that weak and pathetic? Or was it a very well choreographed scenario to show that the police effectively were intimidated because they were outnumbered and there was nothing that they could do, when in actual fact the orders from above were not to do what they really should have done? I don't know. Let's give them the benefit of the doubt, shall we? I love my country. I'm far right. Yes. Well, unfortunately, these people don't have a clue what far right actually means. But as I've said a few times just lately, you may have noticed that news from Germany is very, very thin on the ground, with the exception of a mosque being shut down in the last week or two. That's about it, really. We're not hearing hardly anything because things are changing in Germany very, very quickly, and it's terrifying everyone. And they are desperate to clamp down as fast as possible before this ripple of refusal to comply makes its way from one end of Europe to the other. But I have a feeling that it may be too late and they won't be able to stop it. I know they can be sued for failure of duty. It is a difficult one because we would be looking at the establishment to help us fight the establishment, and we need to get through their gatekeepers, which is the virtue signaling hypocrites who are our media. And as you're aware, the vast majority of not just the UK media but world media is owned by just a handful of people. You'll probably find most of them in either Davos or Bilderberg or both. 5-point petition with 5 million signatures: halt immigration and end net zero. British jobs, houses for British people. Yes, the problem is unity. This is our problem because the media and the institutions have done a very, very good job in brainwashing people and brainwashing young people, brainwashing all of the lefties and dividing everyone. And if you have spoken up about anything to do with being patriotic or our country, you will be aware that the left are so toxic it sometimes can take your breath away, how horrid they can actually be. And they'll go to any lengths and they will say anything about anyone. They have absolutely no conscience about fabricating lies about you and then repeating those lies and then repeating those lies again as though it were the gospel truth. That I can tell you from experience. Agent Keir doing the boys at Davos proud, isn't he just? At the mercy of his own country. Do this one. Okay. Yes. But again, even in Leeds, it began with a child being taken away. Although we haven't heard any more about these children, I don't know what's happened there. But other communities got involved, and even there was a mission to misrepresent what had actually happened. And it's quite interesting that all we hear from them is misinformation, misinformation, and misinformation. The ones guilty of misinformation with malice aforethought are those from the mainstream media. Because on that night in Leeds, there was a certain person who was elected who was in the middle of the protest, geeing everybody on. Um, there was footage of him doing so. But when it got really out of control and it started to dawn on him that he and his cohorts could then be implicated, he suddenly performed a few stunts for the media, grabbing a pallet off a young man and shouting at him and filling buckets of water up and throwing them on that bus that somebody else set alight. Staged managed to be caught on film so that he could then be portrayed by the useful idiots as being a hero. He was nothing of the sort. His behaviour when he was elected in the by-elections, to me, indicates exactly where his loyalties are. They wouldn't ignore a 5 million person petition, plus 100,000 descend on London and refuse to move. I'd like to see that is 100,000 or a million, 100,000. I think it needs to be over a million or more. It needs to be significant numbers, but it must be peaceful. It absolutely has to be peaceful, because this guy, he's lining up his thought police to literally enforce a Stasi state on this country as soon as possible. And we need to be careful that we do not give him the reasons to do that, because once we get to that point, it will get very, very, very difficult. Bill Vanna have looked. You can take them to High Court or something. Again, if there's any amongst you who are have a legal background and I'd be grateful to know what the situation is. I'm not certain there. Power to the people, absolutely. This is why, first and foremost, it's about democracy, 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 democracy. And there's only one way that we can do that. It is to ensure that people from grassroots are involved and have a vested interest and have a voice and can contribute. And we need to be doing this now. We should be doing it now, because we need to be fighting already. We need to be out there, and we need to be explaining to people what's going on, what's happening, what the consequences are, because it's not that people don't know or anything like that. People are busy with their lives. They don't have time to actually read between the lines and compare notes and figure things out. People glance at the headlines and then subliminally they are programmed by the mainstream media, and that's what they actually count on. Everybody being too busy to actually see the truth. Well said. Starmer is yes, isn't he just? We're in danger. We are. This is why I'm saying we don't have too much time. We cannot procrastinate forever if we are going to recover from this catastrophe that we're in now. And we are in the midst of a social and demographic and political catastrophe. If we're going to recover from this, we need to be acting fairly quickly, because it will not be that long where any hint of contradicting the narrative will see people literally just cancelled or imprisoned or worse. Post-war town planners did more damage than the Luftwaffe ever. Oh, didn't they? Just. I will actually. I will actually make a few videos. I keep meaning, but I haven't had time. Legacies of Labour filmed in and around Northampton, and I'm sure there are many other places who have had as much damage inflicted on them by these nutters as Northampton. Absolutely, get them out. All I can say is Labour is creating the far right, not stopping it. If I've said this before, I can't remember. I do apologise if I'm repeating myself. We need to remember, as I've said, it's create a problem, or terrify the people, offer a solution. This is not just recent. This has always been the case. It's just been done more effectively, not just in the last few years, but in the last few decades. Now, many people do think back to, for example, the 1980s, the years under Thatcher, that we were more free, but really were we? Let's not forget that she championed to drag us into Europe and later admitted that she knew we were signing up for ever closer union, but she lied because the British public weren't ready for it. Let's go past that to John Major, early 90s, an IRA bomb on the M1. Forgot this was at Staples Corner, I think. And in the usual political format, he made his speech. He's going to clamp down on terrorism, and why should terrorists be permitted to give no comment interviews, and their silence should be taken as guilt, and where they give no comment, the judge should be permitted to direct the jury to find them guilty. And everybody agreed, why should terrorists be allowed the right to silence? But when it went through Parliament, it had changed from terrorist right to silence to criminals' right to silence. So you bump into somebody in the street, in a pub, in a venue at work, and they turn around and punch you, and you punch them back, and it turns out to be a criminal charge for affray, for violence, for GBH, for ABH, whatever it may be, and you decide that you don't trust that policeman and you want to go no comment, then effectively, because of that law, the judge can direct the jury to find you guilty. But if that wasn't bad enough, within 3-4 years of that, in the 90s, we had the speed camera. And that was the most significant change to our legal structure since the Magna Carta, because for the first time since the Magna Carta in this country, we went from innocent till proven guilty to guilty till proven innocent. And that was in the 90s. Then we had Tony Blair, and the rest you know. So effectively, this has been a creeping erosion of our liberty, of our freedom, of our society, and complete control by these arrogant, evil, selfishly motivated elitists and their globalist paymasters. So that might cost a fortune, no good on my pension, which is going to be reduced by the look of it. I completely agree. I'm glad I'm reaching the end of my days on this planet. I'm in absolute fear for my grandchildren, though. This country is not safe anymore. Jackie, I completely agree with you. I don't recognise the world around me anymore. I don't even like anything that I watch that's been made in the last 10 or 20 years. I only feel at home when I'm watching old episodes of Minder or The Sweeney or whatever it is, when this country was this country. I don't understand how everything that seems to come out on TV seems to look like the population of a different country and not ours anymore. It's changed so much. I know it's in the nature of British people to be peaceful, to be tolerant, to be kind. Too kind, I'm afraid. But the problem is this, that we all need to ask ourselves, are we going to take the bull by the horns now or in the near future? Or are we going to kick the can down the road because we are being tolerant and kind and nice and peaceful? But in reality, the second option actually means that we are condemning our children or our grandchildren to fight this fight because we have been too weak to fight for them now. But every day that goes by, more arrive. Every month that goes by, it's thousands more. Every year that goes by, it's millions more, because it's not just those arriving on boats. Um, People are arriving in all different manners, and if this nutter does sign a cooperation agreement with the EU for us to take a quota of their migrants, that then has opened a pipeline. Whether it's 1,000 a month or 10,000 a month, I don't know what it would be, our quota. But I can assure you, sure as eggs are eggs, if it starts off and it's 1,000 a month next month, by next year it will be 5,000 a month, and by the year after it will be 50,000 a month, because the plan is to literally overrun not just the UK, but the whole of Europe. And anybody who objects to it is then deemed to be, as Jeff Taylor, it's his catchphrase, far right. And we know that it's nothing to do with being far right, to love your country and to love our history and all of the great people who gave their lives, who fought for this country, good or bad. There's so many of them, so much history, and our young, as opposed to being proud of our history, are being made to feel ashamed of it. That is just beyond contempt. However, I'm sure people would donate via GoFundMe page. Obviously, some can't, but they still can show their support. Otherwise, need to be careful of that, because it wouldn't surprise me if they use some kind of law to either shut it down or seize the money or anything. Um, you need to keep in mind where we're at now. London is probably the biggest money laundering centre in the world. The hypocrites stand in Parliament and talk about tax havens, and yet one of the biggest, Gibraltar, who does that belong to? And yet, if you or I have a half decent win on a fruit machine and go to put it in the bank, they might actually freeze our bank account down because they want to investigate where this cash came from in case we're laundering money. But they don't take any time to go and check out why there are 10,000 takeaways in each town that could not possibly be making a profit selling their, horrid wares, because, be perfectly honest, the days of a decent takeaway are gone. Now they're all the jack of all trades and master of none. No matter what you order, it just tastes the same. But having been in the business, yes, it goes with a hereditary territory in my parents and so on. I can tell you, I can look at a takeaway and I know that place is not making a profit. Having family who's in the barber and hairdressing, again, goes with a hereditary territory. Same. I could look at them and I could think, you are not making money. Why are you there? What are you up to? What are you doing? There is no way many of these businesses are actually making money. It is the easiest thing in the world to monitor a shop. The easiest thing in the world. It is so straightforward for HMRC to set up cameras and monitor everyone who goes in, everyone who comes out, everything they're doing. In a month, you will know exactly what they are doing. But they don't. They just let them get away with it. And yet, you or I can't even go about our business without being penalised more and more. And that is wrong, because at what point do we say enough is enough? Tea, no sugar, Anne. It's my pleasure. I need to rein it in a little bit, apparently. I do know. And I do always start off with the intention of doing that, and then I just lose it. There you go. But I can't speak from a script. I just can't. I can sometimes make a video and just say what's on there. It's a real struggle. But when I'm speaking live, no matter how I plan it out, I always go off on a tangent. I don't know. But I've always been that way. I don't know if it's anything to do with you know, inability to concentrate, or if it's some form of ADHD or whatever. But it's quite interesting because you never, you know, it's not only you that never knows what I'm going to say. Even I don't know what I'm going to say next half the time. Thanks for your wisdom, Anthony. Very interesting. Michael Collins. No, thank you, sir, and thank you all for joining me because I'm learning from you. I need to speak up about this. I feel more comfortable to speak out, especially where party and voting for candidates and everything now after the fact, after the election, because I'm not speaking to you now as somebody who's canvassing for votes. It may well be that I've spoken out too much for reform to be happy for me to stand again. It may well be that because I went down to London on Sunday, that for them they would refuse to have me stand because of that, which would be very, very sad. But even if that were to happen, I will not stand if I were the only candidate. I don't want the people of Northampton North to be stuck with me because I'm the only candidate. I want others, young and old, and male and female, and I want the people to choose. And whoever they choose has to fight the fight uh, to the best of their ability, and we all need to be behind them from now. That's all I want. And I would urge all of you all around the country to be pushing for the very same thing. I'm not criticizing the party or leadership or anything like that. I have this sense of urgency, and I don't know why, but I just have this feeling that we need to get our teams together as soon as possible. There is no time to delay. Uh, oh God, yes. Um, the recall can topple the entire government and bring about by-elections, but that would need the hardcore voters to take that on board. This is why, for everything that I've just said, no, I don't want to repeat myself, but this is why we have to have all our ducks in a row quickly. Starmer cares about Muslims more than British people. I think this is more a WEF thing. I think that the intention is to use one culture that is perfectly clear about what it is and what they want to destroy another one, and they will then deal with that one further down the line. That's what I believe the intention is. That's why it's being encouraged. Just today, I emailed Farage on his QB News email, one solution to fix everything, and for real. I hope they don't filter it out. Please make sure he gets it. Save the UK and save lives. Yes, I don't want to see our country deteriorate into civil unrest. But we need someone like Tommy to fight the case, but he would just keep getting arrested. I'm too near 80 to start this sort of thing. I now wish I was 20 years younger. Understand what you're saying, Bill. But there again, with you being 80, that means that you have some wonderful memories when this country was free, even though perhaps many people didn't realise just how free they were compared to how things are now. And you were around in the day where you could pass your licence and go and buy yourself an Austin 1100 with an exhaust held up with a piece of string and just get in and just drive it and not have to worry about speed bumps and speed cameras and traffic light cameras and ULEZ and congestion charge and so on and so on and so forth. Whatever happened to our country? JD is truly vile. There's no emotion, just a blank stare, unless he's on his ego tour or making vids about him on a phone to Biden or visiting the GB Olympic team. I noticed that the first time I really saw just how blank his face can be was the night he had a debate with Rishi Sunak. I think on that night, Rishi Sunak must have downed a few tins of Red Bull because he was like a jackhammer. But it was entertaining, and he did throw things constantly. He just wouldn't shut up, if you remember. But when he overwhelmed Starmer, Starmer's reaction was one of just back like this, like a rabbit in the headlights. He really, really does not have any ability to interact. He is almost like a like a badly programmed android. Douglas Murray, he's so articulate, so well spoken, isn't he just? Yes, he does. Just because there is no longer an EDL doesn't mean there is no longer any Englishman. Oh, absolutely. There is no parliament. No, it is literally just an administration centre for the WEF. That is what our parliament has become. A charade, an absolute charade. I was about to say absolute shower. Who was that? Terry Thomas. So I can't remember feeling this angry before. I don't want. I don't want people to be angry to the point where they react. We must not react. We must respond in a calm and civilized and organized manner. This is our country, and we are not going to be provoked into turning it into a war zone. And we will also, or we must be careful that we are not provoked by this incoming Stasi into behaving in a manner which will give them the excuse and the justification to tighten things down even more. We need to be very, very careful. I don't know what happens in Parliament, but I have the feeling it seems that everybody who enters that building is almost neutered. I don't know. Do they do something to them when they initiate them? Have I missed something? Because they're not politicians. It's just a bunch of wimps. I think the reference of VAR was to Keir Starmer. I think, not Douglas Murray. I don't know, but I think Douglas Murray is fantastic. He's so well spoken and he's very, very good. My messages are being deleted, but I'll keep trying. Rob, I would never delete your messages, sir. I don't know if they've disappeared somehow. All I'm doing, I'm not even on YouTube or Facebook. I'm in an app, and as they come up, I just click on them to be shown on the screen. I'm sorry if they're disappearing, but I certainly don't delete messages, even abusive ones, because I do like my regular visits from my trolls. It makes me feel loved. Bowl Runner, you're being true to your country. It's good enough. GB got on the mainstream bandwagon and denounced the protesters. Farage is on his way out, like Tucker from Fox. Now, I did see something about Patrick Christie's leaving, but it's unconfirmed. As in, I'm not 100% certain. I don't know if you've shed any light on it. I have to say that GB has increasingly gone native. I was hoping that Talk TV would have more gumption once it left mainstream and went back online, out of the clutches of Ofcom. But apart from one or two presenters, they're not as fierce as what either of them were in the early days. And to be honest, I have noticed on GB News that they seem to just give more and more voice to people of opposing opinions than to those who are expressing an opinion and information that people want to hear. Also, I seem to notice I often go to the GB News channel on YouTube and I look through their videos so I can see so I can just go straight to watch whatever I want. And why are there so many videos about Harry and Meghan? I'm not interested in what they are doing. And there are days where I see 3, 4, 5 videos in one glance of them. Why do they waste valuable airtime? Is that just simply a way to fill up their slots with just nonsense news? I don't know. We knew this coming with Starmer. Yes, he wanted to keep us all locked down forever during COVID, and no knickers rain. Wants to build on miles of UK countryside. Fight and get them out. Fight. Yes, absolutely. No more building. We must stop losing farmland to building, whether it's houses or anything else, and to solar farms and to wind farms. We must stop losing farmland. They are leading us down a path to starvation. And is that a coincidence? Nothing with these people is a coincidence. It's all a sinister plan. Beyond words. I have never disliked a person as much as Starmer and Khan, the enemy of the people. I don't understand how people who, for example, are in London and can't afford to buy a newer car, how can they cope? How can they live now if they because they can't afford to be paying ULEZ every day? How can they function? What are you supposed to do with your shopping? Pay 20, £30 in a cab every time? Get on a bus with it? I don't understand how he's got away with doing this to people. Really, I don't. I mean, this is different. But here Starmer and Cos made me beyond angry. Something dark this way comes. Never a truer word. I live in a traditional Labour-run London borough, worked for local government in service and always felt proud until now. Starmer is creating his own Stasi. He is, and today he basically announced it. Their children won't matter now to the left. They got them returned. And Starmer, calls us people thugs. That's all they can do because they don't have an argument. Let's have a look what else we've got here because I've got so many. And I still work. But considering resigning now for not being able to align with our London mayor being allowed to push division and two-tier policing. Starmer said once to a man, I don't answer to the likes of you. I've never forgotten that statement. Yes. Yes. But what do you expect from the son of a toolmaker? Someone won't able to travel alone. Surely you can start to go from the page to hire buses, help those in need get there. I really don't know. I think it's absolutely horrendous what they have done to people. Just the Labour Party, not the whole country. Well, I sincerely hope that we don't see Khan ushered in through a by-election and into leader. It could just happen just like that before even people realise suddenly he's Prime Minister. I'm all frightened for our grandchildren and great-grandchildren, which I have to. God help Britain. I'm going to be fair to the police here. I saw no one in riot gear. Was this due to the fact a riot began on the spot and they didn't know what to send out? And the recent mass protest, they had pre-info? I don't know about that, but they definitely provoked yesterday because I could see it live. If you watch the video Martusi posted earlier, a live stream rather, there's some clips that he showed while he was on a boat in Spain. But there you go. And I don't think it's long before we will see them. We will see them out in riot gear on a regular basis. This is the direction that we are heading. And we have to ask ourselves, why have our inner cities been allowed to be run down to the point where they're basically lawless? Is it that just a case of lack of resources? Or is it creating the problem so that they can terrify the people, or rather, so that people become terrified so that they can offer their solution? And their solution will be portrayed as restoring order. That's how it will be portrayed. And there'll be idiots out there who will actually support it. History repeats itself, doesn't it? Yes, absolutely. Hello, Rob. Yes, I can see your message here. I can see it, and I don't know if there's if I've missed any. I haven't seen any others for a while, but I can definitely see this one. You should be able to see it on screen now. Joe, how do we take the bull by the horns when we're labelled hard right, not listened to, spied on by our employers for any sign of not being a sheep? Um, this does take care. Uh, we have to be very, very careful. And if you are employed in a situation, as I've mentioned earlier, this is where they get you, where your employment could be at risk. Then you need to be extremely careful how you do things. Um, Keep in mind that they might be able to monitor your PCs at work and so on. So obviously, always be careful there. Be very, very careful if you work for someone with your social media. Clamp down your account completely, hide everything, remove everything, and if necessary, create a different account, but don't have your don't make sure you cannot be identified. Um, just assume that they can see your account. So if they could, and they were looking for anything to pin on you, what would they find? Look at it from that point of view. Um, this is not the way we should be. We should be living. Uh, really, it isn't. And moving furniture around. Joe Wells, we do as they did. We smile, we fake. Not first time I've done that, but that's another story. And Joe Wells, oh my God, yes, we are the epicenter of money laundering. Well mentioned. Absolutely. It's just utter hypocrisy. Utter hypocrisy. And back to the housing again. I think it's absolutely outrageous that people from around the world can literally use our property market as some sort of car park for their ill gotten gains, leave them all empty and locked up, and people in this country struggle to find somewhere to rent or to buy. Property is a finite product. It should not be allowed to be used by overseas investors to launder their money. Yes, if they want to bring money into this country, then it should be directed at construction, redevelopment, inner city regeneration, where we want it. But no more building on our greenbelt land, no more building on our farmland, no more building on our children's, um, you know, football fields and activity centres on the edges of town, etc., etc. There is no need for it. There is enough capacity, provided we get a grip of this invasion. Sorry, what about offshore banks? Well, same thing, effectively. And I am concerned about this push towards digital currency. Again, we're hurtling down the road to complete control. Yes, absolutely. We do have one here in Kingsthorpe that that sells fake cigarettes and illegal booze, and I stumbled into it when I was asking everybody to join the WhatsApp Crime Watch group, and they were intimidating, bordering on threatening, and I just pretended that I was just stupid and that it went over my head until I got out the shop safely. And needless to say, I've never been back. Uh, Cheers, Rob. Yes, we can see you, my friend. We can see you. Uh, Tommy, let me find you the link for the investigation into money laundering. We should all do the same, report them all. But the two-tier policing makes it unfair. Discussion, protest. Absolutely, of course it does. But I chose a paper sheet to share rather than independent. Let me just move down a little bit. So sad, our government determined to ruin our country. It's not normal behaviour. No, but these are not normal circumstances, and these are not normal people. These are treacherous people. It can only be about money and power. Why not just be a CEO of a bank if you're so righteous and want a fair economy? No, this is about power control. Next, the Illuminati wannabes. Yes, but there again, look what happens to CEOs of banks. Look how Dame Alison Rose behaved with Nigel Farage, and look what was in his file when his subject access request came back. And I've got one at the moment with the BBC and Sky News and another paper for tweets that mysteriously appeared. That I've never heard of them, never seen them before. But there you go. They turned up a week before the election. How convenient. Two-tier policing at its finest. No wonder the British public don't trust the government anymore. You sound like a therapist, and it's so true. Don't give away your power. Oh, I don't know if I'm a therapist. No, but I hope that amongst this, all of this concern, that my message is one of hope and a way out of this, and a peaceful way out of this. And I hope that those of you who are younger can reach out to your friends, can open their eyes as to what is happening, to the way that their future is being taken away from them, masses of debt for degrees that do nothing for them, children who have very little aptitude for general academia, but they have aptitude for engineering, for electrical, for electronics, etc. Why are they being forced into and being shoehorned into this Marxist one-size-fits-all academic program? Why can't they go off and be apprentices when they're 13 or 14 and have some of the academic side fitted in to their apprenticeship? So when they're 18, they're not leaving school having had enough and don't want to know, or maybe then starting college. At 18, they're fully qualified electricians and plumbers and carpenters and engineers where they can actually earn a great living. Why have we got all of these people that are being ushered into university because we have to make up the numbers and we have to have people in these positions, not based on their aptitude and their ability, but based on the demographic prerequisites, which is causing absolute mayhem. There is so much that the battle is for the young people because they are our asset. And when I say our asset, our young people, doesn't matter whether it's your children or mine or your neighbours. I'm talking collectively as a society, our young. And I know that young people can be a little trying at times, but that's just how it is. But we owe them, and we are letting them down because what state is the country that we're leaving for them? Not a very good state. We should be angry, however, we need to think through. Anger just gives us relief for a moment. No, this is not about raising anger. This is not about reacting. This is about addressing it, being realistic, and doing things in a brave and determined and unrelenting manner collectively. I've been trying to post a link to the latest release from the WF, but it keeps getting deleted. It's worth listening to. Yeah, well, if it's something that you think is in danger of being deleted, download it. Save it online in 2-3 locations, and then just post a link for people to just download it. Love Murray, yes, great guy. They don't want to hear your voice. They already have a narrative that you are a far righter. Yes. Uh, Pleasure, Rob. Uh, Sorry to say it's too late talking. We need 1 million people plus to march on number 10, demanding Starmer and Labour stand down and hand over to reform. Maybe more than that. But we need to make sure that reform is ready with the candidates, and all the foundations need to be in place. Are to your knowledge, any Labour MPs are dissatisfied with Starmer and co? I don't know, and if they were, they wouldn't speak out. We need another election. We can't just switch govs. Sorry. Uh, I'm so glad that you have respectable position in council, Anthony. Keep up the amazing work. The voices of the unheard have changed, and this needs to be acknowledged. Impartial but right. Well, I'm only a local parish councillor. It's not. I can't do major things, but I do like. I do my best to just help out locally. So it's rather than just being just a nobody as a counsellor, I can approach people, which means it just gives me that opening for me, like I've done with the shops. And I'm noticing now this group that I've started, Asda's in it, Waitrose is in it, Boots is in it. I've got all of these shops, and I visit them every week and ask them how they're getting on. And it's it's not exactly a major thing, is it? A little group, but it wasn't the group, it was actually encouraging them to join. But now the smaller shopkeepers feel so much better because they don't feel alone. And there's more things I'd like to do locally, to be honest. So not having become an MP is not the end of the world, because there's so much I can do locally. And if you ever look at my property channel, there's other things that I'm up to as well. To sudden the march demanding another election. Thank you, Anthony, for speaking sense. I'm trying to. I hope that uh, my passion for our country is obvious, and our history for all of Europe. I love all of Europe. Don't like the EU, but I do love Europe, and I'm very sad at what's happening to Europe, and it's terrifying. It really, really is, and we need to stand up against it. We have to. Where is the king in this mess? Shouldn't someone talk to people? Shouldn't say something? Yeah. Well, ever since Charles I, they've been a little bit hesitant to speak up, haven't they? The king is protected. He thinks he will be when... No, he won't. He'll be the first one to go. Russell Brand being demonetized for sharing his opinions comes to mind. Oh, yes, absolutely. Every other day, I'm blocked. Let's have a look. Maya was in the channel stopping the boats. Starmer is a vile human being. Yes, he looked like he was in the channel stopping the boats, didn't he? Only he was in Spain, but perhaps he's stopping the ones. Perhaps he's somewhere near Gibraltar, stopping the ones coming from North Africa. Who knows? You never know. We should let our feelings be known and protest to get Starmer out, because let's face it, he never got the people's votes. He won the election before voting started. Absolutely, he did. My pleasure. What is this greyfield land? Stealing the green lungs of our city, taking away farming so we are not able to sustain ourselves with food if we fall out with EU. Absolutely. And it is the EU that is responsible, namely France, that is responsible that we don't actually have a trade deal, as when I say we, when we were part of the EU, and now I suppose we need to. But how can we when we've got a government that hasn't even, this one and the last one, implemented Brexit? But the Mercosur trade deal, which is like the South American countries, could have provided us with grain, food, oil, etc., all different things. But every time there was a decision made, France always vetoed it, because France was only concerned about its own interests. This is the fundamental failure with the EU. You cannot have a unity of nations based on a veto. It must be based on democracy. So effectively, when there is a veto, the way the EU works, one country can block the entire process for everyone. And as they have been growing, they have been grinding to a halt. Now they have started accession talks with Moldova and Ukraine. Who's going to be paying for them? If Starmer signs us up, we're going to be funding them too in the near future. From our lands to sea, deport the Jews, satanic symbolism, Judaism on display at Olympics. Can't agree with that one. My son has an EHCP. He doesn't fit into the paradigm. He's an incredible engineer. It was engineers that built Britain. Absolutely. And this also applies to those who are either autistic, on the spectrum, special needs, all different, because they all have different qualities. And we need those qualities. All those qualities contribute to our society. And that's why when people are different, we need to establish where their strengths are, because everybody has strengths one way or another. So why should you be forcing somebody who's clearly linguistic but not mathematical or scientific to be forcing science on them, or vice versa? Why should you be forcing somebody who's talented with their hands into academia? We are not respecting children's natural natural way of finding their own way anymore. We are, and have been for several years now, many years now, actually exercising academic Marxism on children. And if you look around, look at the result and look at the damage we've done to them. Most of them are suffering from climate anxiety because they think it's going to be the end of the world tomorrow. They are in despair. They're ashamed of themselves, their heritage, their history, and so on and so on and so forth. And then on the other side of the coin, we've got all of these people who are angry. They're angry because they're the victims. They're entitled. They're owed. We've done them wrong. How do we let this happen? Just wondering what it's going to take to get control of our country back. How many more kids have to die before the government will act for the British people? And how many more attacks on women and children are going to be covered up? We haven't even touched on that yet. The fact that for 15 decades, women have been fighting a noble battle to get to where they are today. And I say are today, actually, where they were a few years ago, because in my opinion, in the last few years, that gallant battle has begun to regress. And we can't allow that, because the strength of the West, the strength of our country, is the fact that we reached a point where, more or less for the main part, where doors were open to people, whether they were male or female, young or old, where there was respect for women, where a woman could walk down the street without being hassled, without being insulted, without being humiliated. But we're going back to that now. And you heard Alex Phillips, probably the only one on Talk TV who's brave, when she said there are streets in London where, as a blonde woman, she can't walk from one end to the other without having serious problems. Not many people would say that. That is a barometer of how far our society has sunk, and that should concern us all, because 15 decades is not long in actual fact. Actually, it's not even 15 decades. If we think back to the start of the great movement for women, which has to be the Married Women's Act 1882, that's just, double up the average pensioner's age. It's nothing. And from that point, where simply before that was passed, married women didn't exist, were the chattels of their husband. And the battle to get from there, 4 more decades to get the vote, another decade to vote on equal terms, another 3-4 decades for equality on pay, and so on and so forth, for us to then allow these people to import people who have absolutely no respect for women, which is becoming uh, simply just the cultural norm in so many parts of our country. How can we stand by and allow that to happen? Because a society that loses its respect for women and loses its uh, inherent moral obligation to protect women, that almost sounds chauvinist, but it's not meant to be chauvinist, is a society that will fall. Every society in history that's moved to the left has fallen. Thank you, Anthony, a great voice of reason and knowledge. Thank you very much. Very kind of you to say. I'm going to need to go in a little while. I just want to answer everybody, but I'm getting parched. Oh, Sean, are you? Are you local? Sean, I'll tell you what, would you like to message me? We can meet for coffee and I can fill you in on things that I'd like to do locally. And I would be so grateful of your help because there are things that I want to do locally. I really, really do mean that. It's a major, it is major to many of us. Thank you. Uh, the country should demand Starmer stand down. As I said, we need to have the alternative in place. And I have been sort of saying this loudly constantly, and I do hope that it can be done fairly quickly. I don't know what they have planned time frame, but there is no time to lose. How do we sing God Save the King? Weren't his oath to be a defender of the faith? Yes. Peter Lyne, Northamptonshire, does need reform. The whole country needs reform. Uh, yes, well, I'm a father of a daughter, and my daughter was special needs. Um, so it was a person, a girl of two halves, if you like. That's how possibly where how I feel and what I've said comes from. Having been her father, and I had her from 8 to 18 alone, so that was quite a struggle, but it was educational. There's this half of her that is perceptive beyond belief, that would pick up on things that would go straight over my head. Incredible. But then there's this other half of her that's incredibly vulnerable. Up till she was 18, I could guard her with my life. And then suddenly she's 18 and I have no legal right to guard her. And I've watched people prey on her. And that's why I feel so strong. That's how it was through her I came across Clare's Law, which I've tried to champion. But what good is Clare's Law when the police on trying to check the background of people with a history of violence are faced with the fact that 8% of our population have arrived in the last 5 years and they don't know a damn thing about them? It's making a mockery of Clare's Law. Mark, I post on the channels and the amount of time it gets deleted or I get a ban. Yeah. Pensioners getting slapped to pay billions for illegals. Yes, illegal. Absolutely. And they want to call them irregular migrants. People who arrive in this country without a passport, because they're not asylum seekers because they've come from a safe country. They are criminals. Entering the UK without a passport can carry a sentence of up to 6 months in prison, not free accommodation in a 4-star hotel, a new phone, and a day trip to Anfield Stadium to learn about the football club, which has happened. Thank you so much. Thank you very, very much. I'm going to call it a night now, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me. If you have any questions, if you'd like to join me on a stream, I would love that. Even if you disagree with me, it's perfectly okay. Thank you very much. I hope that I'm leaving you more hopeful than disillusioned. If I haven't, then my message hasn't been getting across. Much as I want to portray reality to you, I want to also inspiring you the fact that we can overcome this. We can get through this. We must get through this. And for those of us who are older, it's not about us. We've had the best of it. It's for these cheeky youngsters. They know it all, I know, but it has to be for them. If there's a reason that we need to stand up to this, it is for them. What was this last one? Can we go the other way? Wouldn't mind a few weeks in France, yes. And thank you very much, everyone. And I will call it a night. And I'll see you next time. Hopefully tomorrow sometime. Good night. Bye bye for now.